The way my wife Jessica says I quit my job is that I got mad, came home and made some spreadsheets. So this is going to be a little bit more personal video. As you'll see, this is still a little baby YouTube channel that's just learning to walk. And let me tell you, there is nothing like recording an entire video without realizing that the mic isn't even plugged in. So I got that fixed. We're going to try this again. Also, I apologize for this contraption here. I don't know how to place the mic in a way that doesn't knock everything off the desk when I use it. And I used to hate whenever I see this kind of thing, but now I kind of understand it. So if this is super distracting, just let me know and I'll try and figure out something else. But back to the story. I was the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer for a $400 million bank. I was doing well. I was the president of our CPA society. On paper, professionally, everything was going really, really well for me. But while I was working at the bank, we decided that we were going to homeschool our 5 kids while Jessica got her book business started. And so at home, my family was leading a very more intentional, very much slower life, while I was still commuting an hour and a half a day and missing out on more and more of their lives as they grew up. And in 2022, towards the end of the year, both my brother and my mom passed away within like 2 months of each other. Totally unrelated. Both of them had cancer and both just happened to culminate around the same time. And that was kind of the last straw for me, and realizing that I did not want to miss out on any more than I had to miss out on. And so I did. I made some spreadsheets to see if the accounting practice that I was doing part-time could actually support us full-time. And it looked like it could work. So at the end of 2022, I left my job at the bank and took North CPA full time. Now, I would love to tell you that after that, everything was just sunshine and rainbows and happily ever after. But if you've run a business for any length of time, you'll know that that's not the case. So I want to walk through what happened during that transition of leaving my full-time job and take my business full-time, in case if it's something that maybe you're going through now or interested in doing or thinking about doing, kind of give you a sneak peek into how this works. I'm going to try and throw up here a graphic of the, I don't know what you call this. I've seen this called different things, the life cycle of change or the emotional stages of change or things like that. But it's the different stages that you go through when you try something new. And I can attest that all of these make sense. So in the beginning of anything, you have uninformed optimism. You don't know what this is going to look like, but you know it's going to be amazing. Everything's going to be great. So that was me whenever I took my job at the bank. I wasn't going to have tax season anymore. I wasn't going to have to work long hours. Yes, I'd have to wake up a little earlier and get home a little later, but it was going to be consistent and I wouldn't have to track my time anymore. It was going to be amazing. The money was going to be great. And that was the uninformed optimism. But as time went on at the bank and I was missing more and more of my life at home and realizing just how hard that commute was going to be, and oh my goodness, how many meetings can you possibly have in a day? And getting home at the end of the day and being so drained and so exhausted that I was just a terrible person to the people that I love the most. And so then you move over that hump and you get into informed pessimism. And in informed pessimism, now you kind of see just how much this sucks. And too much more of that, you move into this bottom part where some people call this the valley of despair or the pit of despair or the crisis of meaning or whatever you call it. This is the point where there's a fork in the road. This is where you have to figure out, do you want to push through this to get to the other side, or do you want to jump ship? And a lot of people jump ship at this point, even whenever things get hard doing something that they love. And I do think that that's a mistake, but I do think that there are times where jumping ship is the right move. So for me at the bank, I was realizing that I was going to have to continue sacrificing personally in order to advance professionally. And there came a point where that just wasn't worth the trade-off for me anymore. And so I took my practice full time, and yeah, I started this whole cycle all over again. So whenever I started full time, I had that uninformed optimism. Everything's going to be amazing. I'm not going to have to commute to work anymore. I can work whatever hours I want. The money's just going to flow through the door. It's going to be outstanding. But then just like with everything, I moved over into that informed pessimism. The work did start to pile up, and the money didn't actually flow as easily as I thought it would. And the hours got longer and longer. And I realized at one point I was working more hours than I'd ever worked for less pay than I'd ever had. And I quickly moved into that valley of despair part where I started wondering, did I make the wrong choice? Because at least when I worked at the bank, I had consistent healthcare and a 401k and a consistent paycheck. And yes, I worked a lot of hours, but not nearly this many hours. And maybe work just sucks and I'm asking for too many things. Maybe I can't have it all. Maybe I can't work from home and see my family and spend time with them and provide for them in the way that I wanted to. But in this crisis of meaning for me, it was way different than when I worked at the bank. Because this time I was willing to fight for what I was doing. I was willing to sacrifice professionally, even if it meant doing that, in order to gain personally. Because I kept thinking back about my mom and my brother, and like my mom had worked her entire life for a retirement that was basically taken from her by her chemo treatments. She saved and saved, thinking that one day she'd be able to finally spend this money that she'd been saving and reap the rewards of this, decades of work that she put in. And it was a lie. It was taken from her. And I think there's a balance here. I think that we can do both. We can live the life that we want to live and spend time with the people that we love and provide for them financially. It doesn't have to be either or. So this is something I was willing to fight for. And so I had to think about what was it that was holding me back from this being something I enjoyed. And for me, it was the lack of consistency. We would take on a new client and the way that the client wanted to work would be different than the client before. And the problems that they wanted us to solve might be different than the problems before. And the way that we had to solve them might be different than the one before. So before long, we had this hodgepodge of things that we were doing where everything was very unique to the client we were doing it for. And I realized that we had to start getting consistent about who it was that we were helping, what problems we were helping them solve, and how we solved those problems. While all this is going on, Jessica's book business it's exploding. Like, it's doing really, really well. I'm helping her with that side of things. I'm helping her figure out the right amount of inventory to buy, what's deductible on taxes, how do you scale ad spend whenever you only have so much margin left to give up, and what things to focus on in her business. So she's teaching me the inner workings of the author business, and I'm helping her out with the accounting side. And it clicks for her before it clicks for me that she says, Seth, you could do this for other authors. I go to these conferences, I'm in these groups, and everyone's having the same problems, but there's no CPAs talking to authors about this kind of stuff. So in 2024, I went to Author Nation and I talked about profit first and cash flow and how to smooth out all that seasonality whenever you're an author. And it went well, it was well attended, but what I noticed was every single question in the follow-up was a tax question for the most part. So I started realizing, they want tax stuff. I just figured that the tax stuff would be boring, but apparently no one was talking to authors about taxes and how it worked for them. So while I was at Author Nation, I got hooked up with Kevin J. Anderson and got asked to speak at Superstores in Colorado. So when I went to Superstores, I did 2 talks. I did one on taxes and one on profit first, and both of them went really well. And throughout this process, I picked up clients along the way and started seeing, they have the same problems. They're all dealing with cash flow. They're all dealing with the more money they make, it seems like the more they spend. And no matter how much money they make, the bank account just doesn't grow. They deal with inconsistent income. They deal with how to scale without having to go into debt. They deal with tax questions. And so then we were able to develop systems on how to help solve those problems for authors in a way that could be done consistently so that we can just keep applying the same thing over and over again. And that actually provided even more value for our clients because then they knew what to expect and then we could just get better and better at it. So since then, I've done 2 or 3 more author conferences. I'll be speaking at NINC in 2 weeks. I'm going back to Superstores in February. I have some other things lined up too that I'm really, really excited about. But the thing that I'm most excited about is the fact that we've kind of found our space. We found our niche in the people that we can help the most solving the problems that we solve in a consistent way every single time. And so no, maybe it's not all sunshine and rainbows just yet, and there are hard times, and I think there's always going to be hard times. But I can say now that we've moved over into that informed optimism stage where we know how good it can be, but we also know how hard it can be. And we're willing to take on the hard because the benefits of the good are just so much greater than that. So where are you in your journey on this? Are you considering leaving the full-time job to do the business full-time? Have you taken the business full-time and you're trying to figure out how to make this work? Are you in that informed pessimism stage? Or have you come across to the other side and you figured out a way to make this work for you? Either way, love to hear it. Next time we do this, I'm going to try and get Jessica on the video with me because she's got some great checklists and systems that she uses to manage her author finances that I think would be super helpful. So I want to ask her about those, have her share those. So if all of that works out, then we will both see you next time.